Oh, there it is.
There we go. And on today's workplace webinar, we look at how we are conducting business in a virtual world. And joining me, and I'm Eddie Matthews from the Stratford District Chamber of Commerce, is Therese, who's an HR specialist with JD Cregan Group, who are Business Growth Advisory. Good to speak with you, Therese. How are you?
Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for having us on. I am so excited. I am great. It's a beautiful day, and I'm ready to rock and roll with the new world of business.
Well, tell me a bit about that. How have you adapted over the past 5 or 6 months with the changes that we've seen?
You know, at first, no one really knew what to do, right? We had this big, scary COVID cloud come down over us, and we were unsure what to do. But from an HR strategy perspective, we took a step back and said, okay, the reality is that life has to go on throughout COVID. So how are we going to make this happen? What are we going to do? And what we've done really is, like everyone else, is move to a virtual world. Now, we were already there, but certainly not, it wasn't as entrenched in all of the sort of HR pieces and the HR strategies and the hiring and the leadership development as it is now. So what did we do? We went virtual. We created more virtual programs. We created leadership assessment tools that we use that can look at things that we were able to do on a face-to-face basis. So when you're doing an interview, even a video interview like this, I mean, you have no idea what I'm wearing beneath this shirt, right? Like I could be wearing shorts for all you know. So we're looking at different clues now on the actual behaviors and personalities that we can expect from an employee when we finally do get them into a workplace. In order to do that, we use leadership assessment tools that look at behaviors versus competencies. There's a whole lot of competencies out there, competency-based tools, and the JD Cregan Group is in a position where creating a leadership tool or a behavioral assessment tool was very valuable, and we're finding it so much easier to use in recruitment. Not so much easier. We're finding that the tool is so valuable that we're actually getting really deep insight into the employees that we were hiring.
Okay, now can I stop you there and ask you about the behaviors? Does that mean whether you're using, you know, a tiger screen as a Tiger King as a background screen, or what they happen to be wearing from the waist up? What do you mean by behaviors?
So what I mean is what we're looking for is for insight into the trustability, the amount of accountability the employee will have, their leadership ability. That's really what we're looking at, right? Because now that we're into this new post-COVID world, where when you're in a room with someone during the interview process, there's the chemistry that's either happening or not happening. You can see how the how the candidate is sitting. There's so many little clues that we take in almost subconsciously that help us make decisions as to whether we want to move forward with that candidate. Right now, we don't see that, right? I see you from here up, you see me from here up. You have no idea if I'm nervous as heck and my leg is bobbing up and down. You have no idea if I'm breaking a sweat, right? And you also have no idea and no way to have an idea about if I'm trustworthy in the workplace, if I'm going to be accountable oh my goodness, if I'm going to be accountable to the job and if I'm going to perform. So those are the types of things that we're looking at. We're looking at trust, we're looking at accountability, we're looking at leadership is huge. Because the thing around leadership, especially in this new world, is you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, a director, a VP, a CEO, right? Leadership is a quality that is, I know for our team, is what I look for in every individual, regardless of what level. Leadership is something that's fairly innate in people. It can be taught. It's more difficult to be taught. But by using an assessment, we can pull out of the information and look at the trend and see what kind of leadership ability an employee will have.
Okay, and that's an interesting point. And before COVID, you know, we were always even told when hiring, check out somebody's background as well. And I don't know if this comes into play with what you're talking about. Does social media still play a role in hiring? And by that I mean, you know, people post stuff that could land them either in a lot of trouble with potential employers or will make them look really good to a potential employer?
Yes, so there are several different types of employers out there. I was once with an employer where security was a big deal. And in that case, we were mandated, and I mandated the team to check out social media, the social media platforms of the candidates. Because you do see things on there that may affect your perception of the candidate. Now, is it legal? Not really sure about that right now. There's so much up in the air around that, but it is out there for everyone to view. And I know that I often counsel young people in, how to find a job. And I will say, clean up your social media, because whether it's right or not, we are looking at it. Absolutely 100%. And then when we're doing Zoom interviews with candidates, and I can tell you can see I have my plant in the background and everything else is fairly calm. There's no family pictures. There's no pictures of my, last vacation where I'm standing in a swimsuit. It's not the image that I want to portray to the general public. So we talk about things like that too during the hiring process. And we look at things like that.
So keep it, if you are hiring, or if you're the one that's going through the interview, keep it fairly generic in the background. Don't use the Tiger King background.
That's right. Yeah, please don't do that. Find a blank wall, put a pretty plant there. You might have some sort of nondescript photo or, maybe a nature scene or something, but certainly not, some hard metal rock band photo or anything like that.
No kidding. But the nice thing, and you brought this up, we see each other from the waist up. Working from home is pretty nice. We all dreamed about it because you could work from home in your comfy clothes, pretty much from the couch. But you do need tips, I guess, if you are going to work from home. Make sure you've got a designated workspace. Have some ground rules for your family, I guess. Those type of things you have to keep in mind too, don't you?
You really do. You really do. We have to be more creative with our spaces at home. But you know what? The other thing we have to recognize is we're all people. And because we're working from home, many people who have been moved to a home office don't actually have a home office, right? So many people are working, like you say, from their couches, from their tables, their kitchen tables, because they don't have an office. So as the employer, we need to be mindful of that too. We need to be considerate about the fact that a dog might run into the room and start barking, or a child might let loose from the babysitter and go screaming at mom or dad, and they may or may not be dressed. I mean, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter at home right now who, trust me, would not be dressed if she ran into this room, Things like that. We need to be mindful as the employer that that's okay. We need to be able to forgive a little bit more than what we were forgiving prior to COVID.
Yeah, good point. Well, we'll probably see us working remotely until a vaccine or a treatment has been found, but our company is still scrambling to come up with a long-term plan to ensure proper social distancing protocols and how to keep people safe, I guess. Is that still going on even after 5 months of this?
I think more what companies are grappling with is we put all the plans in place. So now we're in stage 3, almost everyone's back to work. Some companies have decided to keep their employees home at least till 2021, which is interesting and good for them. Some companies have everybody back at work. So we went through all that planning it was quite the rigmarole, right? It wasn't just the plan, it was the process, it was the communication, it was the building the policy around it. So all of that is done for most companies because we're all back to work. What's really interesting and what I'm seeing when I go into some of our organizations is that it's difficult to keep employees on track and following the social distancing protocols. Because again, the COVID tired is happening, right? We're seeing it out in society as well. And so as leaders in organizations, we need to continue to follow the protocols and ensure that our teams are following the protocols. We don't want to slip backwards. I mean, we're doing a great job in Ontario. We don't want to slip backwards.
Yeah. Does that mean, do you find that there's a bit more stress on affecting the hiring process, both from the person that's applying for it and those in the HR department?
Yeah, it's, I've pondered this, and I don't know if it's more stress or it's just different stress. So when you're getting dressed to come into an interview, and I've seen it so many times, and I feel for the candidates quite often because they sit at the front and they're waiting for their interview, and you can see most of the time they're very nervous. So we've sort of eliminated that piece of it because we don't see the pre-interview anymore, right? Because there are less face-to-face interviews and there are less jobs available, and many people are not comfortable in front of camera. That's a different stress. We've added the stress of technology also to the candidate pool because we don't like to think this, but the reality is that there are some people out there who don't have the funds to have either a camera in their house or a laptop or something that will allow them to do the Zoom interviews. So we've added that kind of stress. I think we've removed the stress of face-to-face though, right? I think we've removed that. It's a little easier for me to sit here, well, I'm not a great example of that, but for candidates to sit and talk to a computer than it is face-to-face.
Yeah, well, it's the old phrase, you can't judge a book by its cover, I guess. You really don't know just by looking at the potential employee what they're going to be like. Usually you get something when you have that face-to-face, you get a good feeling of that person. It's hard to do it when we're doing the Zoom calls.
That's correct. Although I think we're getting better as the HR and hiring managers are getting better at it. We're asking different questions. And like I said, there are tools available, right?
Yeah. Hey, should employers be expecting more from people now than in the past? And how will that affect even hiring?
I think it's different. So I think it's actually almost in the reverse. Employees should expect more from their employers. So what we expect from employees is more accountability, and we talked about that, right? We need to be able to trust. Trust is the biggest deal right now. Many employers who prior to COVID didn't allow their employees to work from home, it was because of the culture they had built. They had built a culture where trust was not at the forefront. Yes, we all say we need to trust our employees, but a lot of those organizations were forced to send their employees to work from home and still don't trust them. So the employers now need to look at that behavior and look within themselves to say, okay, well, we didn't trust. How is this working? Yes, it's working. No, it's not working. From the employees, what we need to expect from them is actual accountability. Less excuses, why they didn't hit their deadlines, because that breeds mistrust, right? So that's where we go with that. So the candidates really have to, the employees and the candidates need to establish somehow throughout their communication process whether they're trustworthy or not. And then communication becomes difficult also. Showing up to meetings on time is crucial, because the moment somebody doesn't show up to a meeting on time, you think, oh, well, maybe they're hanging their laundry, or maybe they're not even in their house. That's where you breed some questions around the actual employment relationship, and is it as strong as you think it is?
Yeah, that's interesting. Who do you think is going to be the most adaptable coming out of this? Is it the ones that are more technically savvy when it comes to computer skills? Who do you think?
That's a really good question. I think those that are technically savvy are heads and tails above the rest. But I also think that if you're technically savvy and you can't prove yourself to be accountable and to meet your due dates and responsibilities, it won't matter whether you're technically savvy or not. We will find a way to work with people who are less technically savvy if they display trust and the ability to complete projects on time.
Yeah, and it comes down to, you're only as good as the people around you. So this is when hiring becomes so crucial, when you want to surround yourself with good people to make your business successful and look good.
That's right. I once had an argument with a boss of mine, and I'm a big fan of employees first, regardless of anything, because if you take care of your employees will take care of your customers. If you don't take care of your employees, if you go customer first, which we all need customers. We understand that. We know that customers help drive the bottom line, but without employees, you're not going to have your customers either. So the shift really has to move away from being customer-centric to being employee-centric, in balance with customer-centric. practices as well.
If you had, and before we let you go here, if you had one piece of advice for a potential candidate when it comes to the hiring process, what might that be?
Be authentic. What we see so often is that people will read this piece of paper, this, job description, and they may have most of the qualities and may not. And then they fabricate a persona as to who they want to be. Then we hire that person based on the persona. They come into the workplace and it doesn't work. Or they change their personality to come into an interview, right? And so then they come into the workplace and it doesn't work. So authenticity is the key. If you're not 100% up on all the skills that we're asking you, just tell us. I mean, you got to us. We chose you as a candidate because of what we saw on your resume and what you told us on your cover letter. Well, if you come in and all of a sudden you try to be somebody else, and if all of that is a lie, then when you come into the workplace, it doesn't work anyhow. So just be yourself.
Yeah, I got a million other questions. I hope we can do another webinar like this in the near future. But in the meantime, if people do want to get a hold of you, how do we do so?
You can call the Jonathan Korean Group. I don't have the phone number handy because in these days of cell phones. But so JD.
The phone number that I see is 51. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You have the number. That's awesome.
The phone number that I've got here, the phone number that I've got is 519-203-1414. But the website, what is the website that we should be looking for?
It's jdkoreangroup.com. jdkoreangroup.com.
Terrific. Therese, it's nice to talk to you, and I wish you continued success, and I really hope we can do this again, and I have a feeling we'll be doing this again in the near future. Thank you so much for your time today.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Therese Van Ness joining me. I'm Eddie Matthews from the Stratford and District Chamber of Commerce.